Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Fan 88 channel. I'm back once again for another review. Of course, I'm here to give you my review on Evil Dead 2. So if you have not seen my review for the original Evil Dead yet, you can check that out. But one of the things that I said in it is that Evil Dead 2, along with Halloween, are both my favorite movie of all time. They're pretty much tied. And along with the franchises too, really, this franchise is extremely important to me, and I very much love pretty much everything in the franchise. And I am so excited to talk about this film. But real quick, one of the cool little behind the scenes tidbits I wanted to talk about was that one of the people that helped get this film going was none other than Stephen King himself. Stephen King, being a big fan of the original, went to talk to Dino De Laurentiis, and pretty much he helped get it started, which is I've always thought was really cool. So real quick, one of the things about Evil Dead 2 that has been talked about for decades and debated and everything is Evil Dead 2 a sequel, a remake, a requel? Because of the whole, opening debacle and everything. Because if you don't know, when they were filming this film, they could not get the rights to the original Evil Dead, so they couldn't show any clips from it. So what they did is completely remake the whole first Evil Dead within 7 minutes of this movie. Except that it's only Ash and Linda this time. So there is no Scotty, Shelly, Cheryl. It's just Ash and Linda. And a lot of the events play out very similar to the original. And pretty much, I believe, you can look at this any way you would like to. If you look at it as a remake, that's fine. I do look at it as a sequel. I've even seen Bruce Campbell explain it. He says, if you watch the original Evil Dead and you cut it off the moment he gets hit by the Force at the end of it, and then you cut off the first few minutes of Evil Dead 2 and go right to where the Force hits him in this one, it can pretty much flow together. And honestly, continuity has never really been the Evil Dead strong suit. Things will happen and then be different later on. It's just something I look past because I just love the franchise. But that whole thing is even if you look at the Evil Dead 2 DVD from Anchor Bay back in the day, it even says here on the back, Ash, played by Bruce Campbell, the sole survivor of the Evil Dead, returns to the same cabin and again unleashes the forces of the dead. And I'm always just he never goes back to the cabin. He doesn't just leave in the first movie and then a few years later go back. So, like I said, you can look at it however you want. But anyway, first off, I just want to say that I love the opening of this film. The opening narration and the visuals. The narration saying, legend has it that it was written by the Dark Ones. Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Roughly translated Book of the Dead. I love that. And pretty much, like I said, the first 7 minutes of this is just kind of a remake of the first one. Ash and Linda are at the cabin. She gets possessed. She jumps in the air. Ash cuts her head off. Stuff like that. Really, the movie kicks in when Ash is once again hit by the Force and flung through the woods. And it's really cool because this is actually the first time Ash gets possessed in this movie. So you actually see a dead-eye Ash. And honestly, because this film had a much bigger budget, way better practical effects, the just effects of the Deadites look a lot better. And I'm pretty sure overall it was much more fun filming this movie. But yeah, pretty much a good chunk of this film is just Ash getting completely psychologically damaged by the Deadites, just completely fucking with him. It's just pretty much psychological torture. Now, you do have other characters in this film. Of course, you have Annie, Ed, Jake, and Bobby Joe that eventually make their way to the cabin because Annie, her parents are Professor Noby and Henrietta. We'll get to Henrietta a little bit later. But yeah, the things that happen in this film, of course, Linda earlier, her severed head bites Ash's hand. And a little bit later, his hand gets possessed, leading him to cut his hand off with a chainsaw. Now that's step one to him becoming Ash Williams, because he's known for the chainsaw hand. So, things that happen is, one thing, this film is also filmed very well. Once again, the shots are excellent, cinematography is excellent. it's just a great movie to look at in general. But one of the scenes that has always made me laugh but it's also kind of dark, is the scene where, Ash is chasing around his possessed severed hand, and of course the hand gives him the finger, and, Ash shoots the wall, an absolute geyser of blood just hits him, and he's just like, "No double barrel here, blow your butts to kingdom come." And then he falls through the rocking chair, and it is just insanity because the deer head on the wall comes alive, looks at him, starts laughing, and then everything just progresses into like the lamp laughing and books laughing until eventually Ash himself starts to laugh and just completely lose it. And it's actually kind of dark, but at the same time, the whole thing about this movie, along with the original trilogy, the original Evil Dead was straight up horror. Evil Dead 2 is much more horror comedy with a little bit of slapstick. Army of Darkness is very much action, comedy, adventure, fantasy, a little bit of horror. I think that this movie does the whole horror comedy thing perfect because it's still very much horror. But anyway, your new characters who get to the cabin discover Ash as well as the bloody chainsaw, and Annie thinks that Ash killed Professor Noby and her mother. And they pretty much throw Ash into the cellar, play the recording, and one of the funniest scenes ever happens. The recording of Professor Noby says that Henrietta got possessed, tried to kill him, and he buried her in the cellar where Ash is. And her head pops up, and Ash lets out this hilarious scream, and it's great. Now, Henrietta is actually played by Sam Raimi's brother, Ted Raimi, and I think that he does a great job. Henrietta is just such a cool deadite. I love that. "I'll swallow your soul." Just all of that. And really, of course, throughout the film, people die in very brutal ways. Like the character Jake, he gets dragged into the cellar from Henrietta, and that absolute, just insane amount of blood shoots out. Like, way more than he would have in his body, but it's funny. And what I love about this movie is the montage where Ash truly becomes Ash Williams. He makes the chainsaw hand, he grabs the shotgun, cuts the barrel to a sawed-off, and makes it his classic boomstick. And he says the incredible line, "Groovy." I can't do it as good as him, but yeah. And from there, a fight happens, and the whole thing about this is that they had found the lost pages of the Necronomicon, Annie and her family. And in the lost pages, there is a passage that opens a rift in time and space that can send the evil back. So, while they're trying to do this, a great fight ensues between Ash and Henrietta. They fight, he kills her, and another great one-liner. The head's on the ground, "Hey, I'll swallow your soul, I'll swallow your soul." And Ash says, "Swallow this," blows the head off. Fantastic. And shit goes wrong, of course. I'm just assuming all of us have seen Evil Dead 2, but if you haven't, there will be spoilers ahead. But pretty much they do open the rift, but Annie gets killed by Ash's possessed hand. So in the end, Ash actually gets sucked through the portal himself and lands in 1300 AD, which of course will lead into Army of Darkness. Now, the ending of this compared to the opening of Army of Darkness is once again very different. When he lands in here, they're about, he says, "Slay the beast to the Deadites," and then a winged Deadite shows up. Ash stands up, kills it. They say, "Hail he who has come from the skies to deliver us from the terrors of the Deadites," and they're all like, "Hail!" Ash is like, "No," and then it ends there. Army of Darkness, of course, picks up. He once again lands, but there's no winged Deadite, and they pretty much take him prisoner. So, once again, it's very different, but I just don't really care. I just love it so much. So like I said, I kind of jumped around with this review, much like I did with the first film. Just because there's so much stuff I'd like to talk about, but at the same time, keep it short and simple, I guess. But yeah, Evil Dead 2. If you haven't seen it and you don't mind me talking about spoilers, I highly recommend you check it out. Evil Dead 2, I love. It's my favorite movie of all time, along with Halloween, of course. Just everything about this film. Evil Dead 2 fucking rules. So, of course, I hope you enjoyed this review. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for my review of Army of Darkness. And with that being said, thank you once again for watching. I will see you on the next one. Peace out.